Okay, I'm just waiting for a few seconds for the people to join in, and then we'll start very shortly. So I think it's top of the hour. So while people are coming in, I think I'll go through the introduction and they will be on in time for the presentation. So good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. Thanks for taking the time today to join us in this webinar. Today, this topic that we're going to be focused on is architectural considerations when migrating from classic to Progress Application Server OpenEdge. As you will probably know, it's we call it PASOE. And our presenter, Lauren Kiefer, is calling in from France, far away from APJ, very early in the morning to deliver this presentation. So before I pass on to Lauren, I wanted to go through a couple of housekeeping items. You see, for those who's new to this platform, you see a control panel on the right-hand side, right top, and so you can hide and open as you wish, and then you'll see the different options for you. By joining the audio, it is best to use the computer audio. If not possible, you have an option to use the phone, so you can take the steps provided by the platform. And please use the Q&A box, or if you wish, the chat box as well, but to submit your questions at any time. We will take the time at the end of the presentation to answer all those, but before you forget, you can put it into the Q&A box. One last thing, we are trying to establish a cadence of webinars with information and updates to our OpenEdge user community. And so anything that you wish to hear more about a specific feature or topic, please put that into the chat, or you can send a private message in this platform and let us know what you're interested in. So with that, one last thing is the webinar is going to be recorded, so no worries if you miss part of it. We'll be sending the recording after the webinar. So with that, over to you, Lauren.
Thank you very much. So I'm Lauren Kiefer. I'm Principal Sales Engineer, EMEA South, so also acting as Technical Manager for Progress France. I am working at Progress for 30 years for now. And so I will cover today Progress Application Server for OpenEdge globally aspects. Some information about releases. We started with Progress Application Server for OpenEdge. We named it PASOE with version 11.5. So it was end 2014. And for now, we have a life cycle of classical AppServer. You probably, and many customers are using 11.7 as LTS version in 11. Starting with 12, we will only have the new generation of Progress Application Server, so PASOE, and classical AppServer will stop with the latest 11.7 versions. For now, we are in 12.7 version, which is not an LTS version. So starting with 12, you should consider use PASOE. Another milestone vision, I mentioned 12.0. We are currently in 12.2 LTS versions. We are planning to release 12.8 LTS version Q4 2023, so soon. And in April 2025, 11.7 will be retired. So we have some time to play with 11.7 still now, but consider to start looking at 12. And beside PASOE and the new generation of application server, there are also a lot of things, new features starting with 12. And now we are in 12.8. So you can imagine that we have many features new during these versions. So to understand PAS for OpenEdge, as I already mentioned, it's not an evolution of classic AppServer. And you also may have seen some other slides, and I will show you afterwards. PASOE PASOE is a highly scalable and secure standard-based application server for OpenEdge. So it's based on new technologies. Many standards are integrated. We are working hardly to improve and to add features on this. And the main goal was to be standard, to have a lot of features, to use more efficiently resources, so on the server side, to be open, and we will see that we added also some features on it. So you probably saw this kind of screen, so saying that, of course, the application server and progress application server for OpenEdge are application servers to serve business logics. But it's like comparing an old GTO car and a Tesla car. So both are transporting people, but one is a car using fuel or gas transmissions, and the other is more a computer than a car. So you have a different user experience when using these different cars. And it was mentioned many years ago when we started with PASOE, and now I will tell you the truth. Yes, PAS for OpenEdge is clearly a new generation of server for your application, and it serves more than application server, classical app server was able to deliver. So what does PASOE, PAS for OpenEdge do? So it connects your application logic, whatever front end you may have, if it's character mode, .NET, GUI.NET, web, mobile, it can be used, and it's based on Apache Tomcat web server. So it's also a web server. So you may imagine that everything will be HTTP based to connect to this server. And we try to be as standard as possible. So using, for example, Spring securities and having capabilities to cluster and load balance more efficiently if needed, so to be more scalable on the architecture-based level. So you can use it on different kind of architecture if you are on-premise, on a cloud, private, public. So we also address security aspects and all features needed to scale if you're going from on-premise to cloud, or hybrid architectures also. So you can use it in many ways. So beyond the architecture, we can say here we have a big picture about what was in the classical app server. So you had different components. So for example, the admin server, so to manage everything on the backend. Name server, if you had to use some load balancing features also. After you had different kind of brokers, depending on the state you were using your application. So you had to define stateless brokers, state-aware brokers. I guess state-aware was not too much used, or stateless or state-free brokers. And also web speed brokers with each time a number of agents. Of course, it was possible to expose to HTTP. So for example, using web client, front-end, desktop, we were able to use HTTP tunneling using our AppServer Internet adapter, which is a servlet exposed mainly on Apache Tomcat. Web Service Adapter, WSA, to expose SOAP services, and REST adapter to expose REST for mobile application, web application, if you have, for example, Angular front-end applications. And of course, web speed using CGI interfaces. That is a big picture behind AppServer, classical AppServer. So we drastically simplify this picture to have only one single server addressing everything. So APSV for any customer in N-tier architecture. So it's like the AppServer Internet Adapter transport, SOAP transport, REST transport, web transport for web speed, and we'll have some topic about this web speed, and also some other aspects about handlers. Everything managed with a session manager, and the new capability of PASOE is a multi-session agent which manage up to 200 sessions. So it's not, you don't have to manage different kind of brokers. You have only one multi-session agent with sessions, and you can manage globally everything. So this multi-session agent can manage multiple client requests at the same time. So you can have SOAP, REST application, N-tier application with APS-V transport. It will be the same instance of application server that you will use. And it can support session managed and session free requests simultaneously. So you can simplify your architecture. Even if you want to specialize, you can still have different ports you want to use with different instances of PASOE. But you can do it with one single instance of PASOE. And it manages the database shared memory connections also. And we work also on 12 to improve database features with server-side aspects, etc. But to have this vision about high availability, 99% of availability we promoted when introducing 12. And the goal was to use less resources. And we saw on the field that we had less resources running when using PASOE, when migrating from application, from AppServer to PASOE. So we had some earlier performances measurements on internal bench, saying that if you are using, in green we can see the classical AppServer, and blue PASOE, it uses less memory globally when using PASOE. So the bench was done on Linux boxes, for example. This slide, it's interesting because you can compare a classical 50 client with one agent to different kind of sizing, going to classical 50 client, 15 agents. So if you will remember the classical AppServer broker and the mono-session agents. And here we have 50 clients, 50 sessions, so we can say threads, we can on the PASOE server side, one agent. So this configuration is more efficient than all the previous, we can say. So it's something interesting to notice on this slide. It's a slide versus response times. And also on resources, we had some measures saying that PAS for OpenEdge could use less resources, CPU, memory, and also was more performant about transaction per seconds on similar configurations. So many aspects, but of course it's an internal bench we did many years ago, and only your application will be the best bench to do. Some example, and I will cover many examples during the presentation. A customer in Europe, 1,200 users running 24/7 activities. He was migrating from 11.7 AppServer to PAS for OpenEdge 12.2 LTS version. He decided first to have AppServer running for long-term or short-term requests, so 60 agents each time, using this round-robin approach to use agents, as you always know if you're using AppServer. And on the PASOE side, configure only 2 MS agents, one for short-term and another 2 MS agent for long-term running. Each time you have 2 agents, so 30 sessions per agents. But in PASOE, all first MS agent takes all the requests. So you can say 30 sessions per agent. And if you had, and some customer had sometimes some issues migrating from AppServer to PASOE due to memory leaks, we will also cover this in the presentation. We were able to gracefully stop an agent and migrate and pass all the requests to the second agent to manage 24/7 or non-stop production sites. Also very efficient. As I mentioned, all theoretical bench is only given to have a vision of a trend, and the best bench will be your application in your environment. What are the features of PaaS for OpenEdge versus AppServer globally? When you install PaaS for OpenEdge, you will have a server PaaS for OpenEdge directory, or Catalina Home, and you will create your instance. So you have a global instance created in a working directory. So you have different directories where you will find all the configuration files. So the configuration files are no more related to the ubroker.property files you have in your installation of OpenEdge. Everything is externalized. So you will copy everything and work on it directly. And when you run and start, and you will have some commands like tcman to run your instance, you will have everything in memory. And I will show you afterwards some demonstration about this. And if you migrate from one version to another, you only need to reconnect your instance to the new version, or if there are new features, you upgrade on the new features on your PASOE instance. So you can have completely not connected to the OpenEdge version PASOE instances on when you install in development or productions. And you have two levels of PaaS for OpenEdge, one in development and one in production. So in development, you can do everything. So nothing is locked. So you have, you can compile, you can configure whatever. You have the different transports, REST, web, SOAP, transport opened. If you're using PaaS for OpenEdge, you need to explicitly configure what you want to use. It's for security reasons, of course. And you have also restrictions on PASOE, like we had on AppServer, running only 2 agents. Here you have 5 concurrent requests and 1 agent. On PASOE, it's related to your license directly. So two versions when you install PaaS for OpenEdge. And as I mentioned, we have some commands, mainly 2 commands, tcman and passman, for to create, start, stop instances, work on features, so you can open or disable features on your PaaS for OpenEdge. You can deploy web applications. You can manage everything on a command line, or you can use, of course, OpenEdge Explorer if you want to use it, or OpenEdge Management if you have OpenEdge Management installed on your system. And I will show you some sample how to create, and I will go to live demonstration. So here you can see, I hope, my command line. I will go to the directory of my OpenEdge. I'm using for now OpenEdge 12.7 version. So I will go to the bin directory of my OpenEdge 12.7 version, and I will create a new server. So tcman create. The first number is the HTTP port. The second is the HTTPS port, secure port, and shutdown port. And I will create an OpenEdge Sydney new instance of PASOE. So it will run on the server, will create everything. And during the creation, I will go to the OpenEdge management resources. So you can see all the different kind of OpenEdge servers I can run. So I just reconnect because of timeout. So I will go back to my resources and see my Progress application servers. So you can see many kind of servers. I will check if my server is running. Taking some time. I will go to OpenEdge PaaS1, which is one OpenEdge PaaS1 development PASOE server already installed by default when you install a version. So you can see OpenEdge PAS1, one able application. So we can go and see what's behind. And you can see the configuration. And configuration, you will see different aspects. Like on AppServer, you have session procedures, activate, deactivate, etc. And also agent on this part. Startup parameters, working directory, and different settings on the configuration. So everything is, of course, available on command line to create and update everything. And you can see also on OpenEdge, for example, on the OpenEdge management console, sessions, requests, etc. If you want to have information on OpenEdge PAS instance. Just going back on OpenEdge PAS1. Yes. And on the web application, you can see all the transports I mentioned: APSV, REST, SOAP, web transport, and all the different services if I try to use REST transport, for example. Okay, and during the time, I see my OpenEdge Sydney application server up and ready to go with port I mentioned. By default, it has one web application, and you can also add different web applications. So that's a short demo about how you can create a new instance of PASOE. Going back to the demonstration, to the presentation, what is possible to do? You can also, if you are still in 11.7, have a mix of configuration using classic AppServer and PASOE. So using GUI application, web application, you can start working on PASOE and expose REST services and develop new features. You can also expose different kind of REST services to B2B applications. So to use REST or XML through HTTP. You can access through shared memory. You can access through a client-server connection to the database. And of course, when you are in 12, you need to forget classical AppServer. Everything will go through the PAS4OpenEdge instances. So another vision, before, when you were using classical AppServer, you needed to have this web server in front or Java Servlet engine to expose some services. So you were only able to run OpenEdge AppServer for business logic, expose this REST manager or web service adapter if you were using SOAP services to expose to other applications. And using PAS4OpenEdge, everything is in the box, and you can use end-tier applications with GUI client accessing business logic on your PAS4OpenEdge instances, expose SOAP, expose REST, and as I mentioned, the global result is to use less processes, less overhead on the system, and you can also have different capabilities due to HTTP transport. So one place globally to deploy everything. And here we're going to, as I mentioned, a corner for developers and architects. So you can natively expose REST services. There are many ways to expose it. One is very flexible web handler. We'll have some time on it. And there are features only possible with PAS4OpenEdge. For a long time, we were able, you can see the timeline, we were able to expose some REST APIs. Firstly, was through REST mapping functions. Starting with 11.6, So many years ago, we started with web handler. So it's a way to expose REST services and to manage any kind of HTTP web apps. So get, post, put, etc. Return codes, status codes, web requests, and web responses. Globally, when you have business logic, so it can be a procedure or classes or what you want, you have the system integration interface. So you have these handlers, and you can manage all kind of get, post, or different requests, HTTP requests coming in, and you can manage in 4GL, in ABL, let's say, everything to manage the kind of request you want to manage. So, for example, if you have a handle get, you can catch all the response requests, analyze and get parameters from it, and adapt, run any business logic with input-output parameters, and send the response back in any format you want. We had a case with a car manufacturer. So the global goal, they had an OpenEdge application running OpenEdge with AppServer in an architecture and tier and architecture. And they had a need to modernize the way to expose services to their distributors. So through a service portal globally, the goal was to use REST services, REST-JSON combination, and to simplify how they expose the services to the outside world. They also added a constraint because the DMS, the dealer management system used by any distributor, was different. So they had to tailor services for each distributor. So the way was to use the web handlers. So the picture was this picture, internal system with the desktop application, web application. And they managed to use Path for OpenEdge with web handlers to manage any kind of different request coming from any kind of application, and to manage something in a central, unique way of doing with the web handlers. So using simple REST mapping was not the best way. Using web handler was more flexible, and they were able to expose it. And with some load balancing also, they had some F5 load balancing, they were able to do everything. So the global benefit was to have this rapid adaptation of REST APIs through web handlers, using a load balancing mechanism with HTTP server and F5 boxes, for example, and have this global vision to cohabitation with REST and other part of the system on the backend. So they were using 11.7 architecture and migrated to 12. And the cost of the solution was very interesting for them because they were able to expose very quickly this kind of APIs. We also had some questions a few years ago, how to expose globally any kind of procedures like service or microservice, we can say, without doing any kind of development. So we have this data object handler way. The idea was to be able to map any kind of procedure or existing business logic with input and output parameters through some JSON mapping file, and to use it in PASOE. So we have the same kind of vision, business logic existing on the legacy system, the data object part on the system integration, and to configure through a JSON file. Can also be generated if you have a way to pass anything, and you can generate this file. And at the end, you have the capability to have this JSON file and to map everything with parameters input and output, and to expose it without any code to the outside world. Of course, this is possible, but probably we'll have a mix of web handlers, REST mapping, and such kind of features in the real world. And the goal was to also have a vision about cloud-based applications. So you can go from existing on-premise applications, so consuming these web services or pass for OpenEdge with, of course, high availability on the database. Expose it with secure aspects. So we also have this security, and we spoke also when I will end the webinar about securities. So cloud environment, so private or public cloud, and expose new features on PASOE. So a quick demo about this REST services. I mentioned a kind of application server, and I showed you already some services on this OpenEdge Pass1 instance. I can run, for example, REST services. So I already have some URL here. So you can see localhost 8010 supporting REST. That's the way you run some services. It's a mapping service here, and I can use other kind of services, and they are exposed on PASOE. And I will show you, I will use SOAP UI, a way to use these web handlers. So imagine we need to have this GET request asking for a customer, a list of customer, or here as web handler will return, for example, customer 1, whatever customer number you want. And you want to have some header parameters which will guide you to an XML or a JSON format. So for example, here I will have this header, start JSON. I will run it, and I can see the results in JSON format. If I want to change it to XML, I will run it, and I will have the result in XML. So how does it work? I'm going to the Progress Developer Studio, and I will see I have here a class. It's a web handler class, demo customer class, with some methods. You can see handle get. Here's a handle get, as I mentioned in the slides. And you have many kind of methods. So I can get the pass parameters, I can get the header, and I can see here I get the value of accept. So in the O format variable I created. And if I use this if clauses, I can see the JSON or XML file, and on both ways I can write JSON or I can write XML. So I can capture whatever information, header, parameters in the HTTP request and adapt in the code directly to have a specific response related. So it's exactly what this car manufacturer did to adapt everything to have this flexibility in the web handler and using Info.gl. It was not possible to do it in the classical app server. And you have many web applications you can deploy on your application server here. And other capabilities we have with Progress Application Server, you saw that we have ABL applications. One PASOE can have multiple ABL applications. One ABL application can have multiple web apps. A web app can host multiple services. And I can say, if I summarize, one ABL app can be considered like an app server instances, because it will have ProPass, database connections, session procedures, as I already shown. And you can use it if you have some, let's say, multi-tenant vision, if you want to have this. So globally, you have an instance, an OpenEdge instance with a port, different ABL applications, web application, and service inside, and you can host different. So the interest of this is that you have one instance, one port, and only with the URL, you can address one application or one module if you want to have your application cut in different modules or different pieces in your IT system. Another example, we had a case with a retailer, and he had on-premise stores, and he wanted to store everything and host everything in a centralized way. So we analyzed different capabilities, and one choice was to have PASOE used with multiple ABL applications. So one ABL application will be connected to one database. So store one is connected to one database, store two with this database, store three on the other database, etc., etc. With also load balancing to be sure that there is failover capabilities and load balancing also. But at the end, we also analyze to have database with multi-tenancy, so have only one database with multi-tenant features. But that was an idea also. And in this feature, we have only one port, and we can address everything through URLs and to access the correct business logic. Also, any business logic can be the same or can be different if you work on the ProPass aspects. Also on PASS for OpenEdge, we have security aspects that are very useful to use. Spring Security for sure, because it's an Apache Tomcat instance we're using. So you can combine with any LDAP or AD capabilities. We also have facilities in our security configuration files to work with any OpenID or OAuth or SAML configuration. So we have many customers for now asking to have multi-factor authentications, and it's very simple to use Okta or Keycloak or whatever security provider you may use, and it will be completely native in PASOE. So any authentication provider, you can use it. Other aspects, since 11.7, you can use PASOE and install PASOE like a Docker container. So we provide it on our download center or Docker Hub directly. And using Docker, you can start very quickly a new instance, configure, having multiple Docker in test, for example, put it in a CI/CD pipeline to use it very quickly. And if you create your Docker file your own way, you can very quickly put this in production also. And load balancing, we have many capabilities because it's HTTP based. We can have any HTTP load balancer like F5 or other. We also have our own load balancer named Load Master. And we can use it, for example, configure a virtual IP address and access different instances of PASOE on the production. So looking on different IP, also different ports, etc. So you can have many applications, GUI application, web application going through this load balancer to have this high ability, and also with some security aspect, but it will be outside of this presentation. Also a quick demo on this PASS for OpenEdge with multi-tenancy. I have one instance, OpenEdge PASS empty like multi-tenant. So the difference is that you can see now in one instance multiple ABL application names. OpenEdge PASS empty, the main one, app1 and app2. So you have different applications. And if I go to this configuration, I can see here, and I will use a multi-tenant database named sportsMT, listening to this port, but I will use different domains and different users. So here, West Sports users. If I go to app2, I will see a different user, South Sports. So I can use a different database, but here it's a multi-tenant database, so I will use another domain. And I can have an OpenEdge PassMT can be, for example, this can be to have access to the super user and to have a vision about globally all the tenant if I have this access. So it's only a demo here and everything is hard-coded here, but you can do it dynamically. And if you want to use it, for example, you can run, for example, on PASMT. So the first ABL app, you can use it here. And you have this web app here. You can run and have all the information. I also mentioned the tenant ID, the tenant name, etc. So you have different customers. If I use ABL1, so ABL1 was this web application. I can see only Westport. And if I run ABL3, I can see Southport. Okay. So it's a way to use a single PASOE in an empty multi-tenant configuration and to centralize everything. It's a way to host many things and to use less resources also on your production site. So imagine you want to use Docker also. Here I use, for example, Docker Desktop. So you can configure and use a Docker file to create your own instance. I have one image here. I can run, I will just stop OpenEdge PAS1 and I will stop it here, for example. I have an OpenEdge PAS1. I can run, for example, here a Docker container directly on my server side. So listing on the ports, so I have a mapping of the different ports here. So I can run it. That's why I was looking to stop my OpenEdge PAS1 because I'm listing on this port. So just waiting some minute. Yeah. So I run. It's a live demo. So I can go to my Docker terminal here. If you are used to Docker, I can go to OpenEdge PAS1, bind directory, and I can run some commands and to have the ports. And I can start also this instance. And after I can go ahead on using my container directly and use this path for OpenEdge. But I will start going a little bit faster because we are going out of time. You have monitoring aspects on your productions. Also, you can use gconsole, Tomcat Manager, JMX queries, OpenEdge Explorer, log files. We also introduce OpenEdge Manager REST APIs. It's using Swagger user interface, so all management APIs are accessible through REST APIs, so Swagger user interface. So since 11.7.4, you were able to use it to configure some files. Now in 12, it's native, so you can have OpenEdge Manager REST APIs Swagger user interface like this. You can manage everything. You also have a new configuration monitor like since 12.4. You will have a link to have more detail on this. You will have a console, a server, centralized server, and you have agents able to manage 12.2. Minimum version is 12.2 to configure, deploy web application on this server. So manage everything remotely also. And we work on standard OpenTelemetry to push all information also from database PASOE to any APM performance monitoring tool you may have through standard OpenTelemetry vision. And in 12.8, sorry, we are also working to make more observable the application and to be able to instrument also the AVM, the virtual machine, the advanced virtual machine of OpenEdge, to get information in your application and to push these metrics to APM tools. So it's something new, and so you need to also look at the coming soon 12.8 version of OpenEdge. Going to migrations, you have a pasprop conversion to convert your ubroker.properties to an OpenEdge.properties file. You have also links here to explain what kind of feature you may use to migrate, and you have a lot of documentations also available for this. And you can use whatever feature you had before using GUI.NET, WinFort, WPF, Java application with Open Client. The only things you need to do is change your connection string. Previously, you have a dash app service connecting to a broker app server, and mainly you need to change to a URL, so localhost or the name of your server, support, and the kind of transport you want to use, APSB, REST, web, for example. Also links on the documentation about migration and knowledge base if you are using WebSpeed. And WebSpeed is also running on PASOE. So mainly very simple to do. Change your connection strings, change and use a correct library if you're using .NET Open Client or Java .client, but test your application. And if you're using WebSpeed, before you have only different capabilities, get, post, you need a web server, etc. A WebSpeed application, here you have an example we provided many years ago, and you can migrate to pass for OpenEdge. It will run on it, and you can afterwards put some modernization effort on the user interface using our Kendo UI, for example, components. It can be done. You migrate your configuration, you will have the same kind of vision on the old ubroker.properties and the OpenEdge.property files. So you will have a configuration similar and running. So it's a very old-fashioned application here. It was a starting point for a real application in 2006. So you had this URL, CGI based, with a web service, and it will transport to a web application, web app here, web transport, and everything is running in the same way. In 2021, it was done, this screenshot. And after you can start enrich your user interface and using new capabilities to modernize. So globally, WebSpeed, everything is HTTP based. You can use the integrated web server of Apache Tomcat, manage with the web handlers everything you want to do, and add string security aspects. So in summary, what did we learn during the years we implemented PASOE? So AppServer Classic, you had a lot of things not able to be supported. Everything is possible in PAS for OpenEdge for now. Some practical lessons also. When you migrate, migration and unit testing is not enough. You need to check if you have memory leaks. Because of multi-station agents, you may or may not have memory leaks. And if you have memory leaks, you can have this out of memory message going out, and you need to detect. And PASOE, we also have features to detect everything and to help for this. So it's if you have memory leaks, perhaps it will be highlighted by PASOE. A lot of new possibilities, capabilities. So we need to go from best practices on the app server to the new generation of servers and best practices, and to learn more on this on your own, and with our help, of course, in professional services, and monitor system with standard tools. We also have a path for OpenEdge tuning guide. We spoke that we can use 11.7, but our message for now is going more to 12. We can say about modernization. Also, you can have some configuration on user interface with 32-bit components and 64-bit components. And you can consider mixing OpenEdge 12 and 11.7 database if you have some aspects you need to have time to migrate also on your database side. I also put some useful links in the presentation. So PASOE OpenEdge tuning guide, migration guide, troubleshooting memory leaks using LoadMaster, for example, web speed Swagger user interface. So you have also these features. And we have many cases using customer using PASOE OpenEdge. So we have some testimonial here reducing by 20%. 25% maintenance cost using Progress Application Server with REST APIs. Other Technion, also in retail, going to 12 and moving to a cloud-based environment also. And the benefits of the business. So globally, you have one single application server, also for Corticon if you're using Corticon, secured, Spring security, more scalable, simplified, so only one multi-station agent to handle everything. New capabilities on monitoring tools. So now new open telemetry with APM capabilities. It's very interesting. So look for 12.8. And performances, many use cases will operate faster on PASOE OpenEdge. And of course, if you want to participate, don't forget to communicate through community, submit ideas. We have many good ideas coming from the field and implemented in our roadmap. Use CVP as a single point to communicate with us. Use also the ASAP. So we have ASAP early software adopter program features available in CVP, progress alert and notification as well, and also different kind of documentation if you have interest in this. So now we have few minutes to look if we have some questions. I don't know if we have some questions already.
Hi. Yes,
yeah.
we do have some questions. I have one question, which is, are there any instances where PAS does not perform well than classic app server, or is this beyond doubt an upgrade to existing app servers?
Short answer is no. PASOE is globally performing better. It will not be 1000% more efficient, we can say. So it depends on the application. Or of course, when we say performances, it can come from many sides. What we learned for now is, yes, we will have performance gains. We also have some capabilities to, for example, not, if you're going to 12, have shared memory access. You can specialize database service on some VMs or physical servers and access through a client server connection. So you also have this way to manage differently the architectures and not using only shared memory. Using PASOE OpenEdge, you also have tuning aspects. So you may tune your application to gain performances and high ability. But the main aspects we saw is to be sure that you have no memory leak. For 24/7, we had one customer going out of memory, but it was because he was not deleting globally and properly some objects. He found it very quickly, but we were able to, in let's say one day, to parameter to make him up and running with his multi-station agent gracefully stop to be able to avoid and to have some workaround solution with PASOE to stay in production, and after have time to correct. But it was done in a couple of days. So performances, we are looking at it very closely. We also had some profiling tools in internally, and with these APN functionalities we provide, we are going more and more to have a better look at what kind of performances and drill down to performances aspects on the back end to see where we can have performances. Because when we have performance issue, it can come from anywhere globally.
Okay. There's another question which says, what should be our migration testing aspects when we migrate from classic to PASOE?
The different steps can be pragmatic. So first, as I mentioned, you have different things to change because everything is HTTP. So change your connection string, etc. Your library if you're using Open Client Java or .NET. Of course, after it will run, for sure. It's a unit testing. So test everything is running effectively. After, workload. You need to be able to stress a little bit to see what's going on. It's not a very large work to do, and we had no customers for now having injectors to test heavily workload. It's like a pilot project, we can say. Often when we have migrations, the partners using PASOE have one pilot project, pilot customers instance. They will run it and it will very quickly run. And for example, I had a customer in healthcare. One big customer is running. They had some issues because best practices were not completely acquired internally of the partner. And afterwards, they deployed very quickly because everything was tested and was working fine. So there are pragmatic steps to migrate from AppServer to PASOE. Of course, if needed, we can inject expertise from our peer side to help on this, because we had a lot of years experiences now on migration on PASOE, because it started with 11.5, as I mentioned, and now we are in soon in 12.8. But my advice would be for now, yes, if you have constraints staying in 11.7 for now, okay, you can use PASOE, but there are more features in 12 on PASOE, and I would advise to have a look at 12 family of OpenEdge for now.
Okay. Another question, which is, with PASOE sitting on Tomcat, how quickly will Tomcat be patched or upgraded when Tomcat vulnerabilities are found and fixed by AppServer?
Yeah, so it will be, if we have security vulnerabilities or whatever issue we may have, it will be fixed in fixes naturally in our cycle. We have LTS version. So LTS version is maintained for 8 years. For example, 12.2 started in 2020, so it will end in 2028. It will be retired, but there are different steps and fixes or services that will be released and in the roadmap to fix everything. If something occurred, it will be directly fixed by our development team to address an issue. Also, sometimes I have a question about Tomcat versions. So we have different Tomcat versions we are following. For now, we are in Tomcat version 9, I guess, and it will be 10 soon also. And we will follow and continue to address everything, every part, if it's on security aspects, on features related to our roadmap releases.
Okay. Continuing from that question, how does it go replacing web speed, where WS Messenger is in the DMZ and a broker in another network segment with PASOE?
Yeah, so it will perhaps the answer will be in the migration guide on WebSpeed, I guess. So I will not go too much in detail, but the migration from a configuration using WebSpeed is quite well documented on the documentation on WebSpeed, and we're using some web handler, specific web handler to address everything. So it can be perhaps a question you can add if the person asking for this, it can address me an email if they want to have some more detail or point out to some documentation for this.
Sure. We'll pass on the information to you.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
There's one last question, which is, you mentioned that PASOE is more sensitive to memory leak. Can you elaborate more and explain what should be done?
Yeah, I just will rephrase a little bit. It's not more sensitive, but it will be more quickly highlighted. If you have, for example, memory leak using AppServer, and if you stop regularly your brokers, so it's a workaround you may have to not to highlight very quickly this memory leak, but in the memory you will have some increase of use. Using this multi-session agent, so you may have up to maximum 200 sessions. So if you have one memory leak and you're having a very high loaded application with a lot of requests, it can, if you don't release efficiently the memory, you will multiply very quickly the amount of memory you will use. So it can highlight this very quickly. So you should do something. It's not a defect of PASOE. It's a normal way to use it. And if you have some memory leak, you should not put it under the carpet. You should address and correct it. But we have a mechanism to be able to detect, switch MS agent to another. So any running request will terminate gracefully, and new request will go to another. But it's a workaround. And if you have this kind of vision, you can monitor it in our OpenEdge Manager REST APIs, for example, or whatever tool you want to use connected to PASOE, and you will see it. So we also have tools, and it's documented, to check where you have this probably memory leaks, and after you will be able in development to fix it. So that's a lesson we learned. So it's a way. I cannot say that PASOE will be able to tune your application, but it will highlight. We had some similar cases on another topic, on CDC, on the database for a customer, for example. It's another story. He was able to check with CDC that there were a lot of transactions not completely correctly written, because a lot of things were done, and it was a way to have this highlighted. Hope this answers the question.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much, Lauren. And I think we are at top of the hour and we need to close it now.
Yeah.
But one quick note to all the attendees. So you will get a new window popped up once you exit the webinar, where you have a feedback. I request everyone to please fill up that feedback. It would help us improvise our content and topic. And also, if you have any suggestions for topic or content that you would like to hear from us for our upcoming webinars, please comment your interest and we'll definitely work on that. And after the webinar, maybe today or tomorrow, we're going to send you the recording, the slides which Lauren shared, and you will have all the resources which was mentioned at this webinar. Thanks again for joining the webinar, and see you again next time.
Thanks for listening. Au revoir.
Thanks, Lauren. Bye.
Bye.
Take care.